I'm Dino Verrelli here, founder and CEO of Project Purple, and we are blessed today to have coming up. You're like up the hill. We could have literally done this up in person, maybe like 2 miles away. But the Seymour boys basketball coach for the last 20 years, Coach Joe Carrafiello. Welcome to the Project Purple Sports special end of the year podcast. We've got a bunch of coaches we're talking to about this past season, and Joe, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me on. I always, like I say, I always appreciate everything you guys do, man. The last couple of years, you guys coming to the games and filming and the things that you do for us, and then also giving people at home the opportunity. I've never realized how many people until they talk to me about watching our games, and it's because of you guys. It's a lot
Awesome.
of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
That's one of my questions, but we'll get to that. But the most important question that I have for you now, but we're gonna start this off hot. Are you coming back next year? I know this year was a pretty special year, which we will talk about being able to
Yeah.
coach the two boys, and the success you guys had over the last couple years. But are you coming back next year?
I guess, like I said, I'll answer this as honestly as I can right now. The boys, Robbie. So for those who don't know, Robbie and Joey, my twins are seniors, and they're senior captains this year, and that was always my end game years and years ago. When they were little, that was always going to be my end game. And going into the season, I kind of felt the same way. But I'd be lying if right now I think I would, be leaning towards coming back right now.
Awesome.
So
Well,
I
we
can't
hope you
give you
do.
I can't give you 100% answer, but I I would be lying if I said I probably would be leaning towards coming back right now.
It's awesome, awesome. Well, I hope you do, Joe. I know we've gotten to know each other over the years, and I've admired all the work you've put in there with Seymour, and let's talk a little bit about that because like you took over a program, you took over for Joe Cav, I believe, right? Who was a
I played for him.
legend.
Yep.
Yeah, you played for him, a legend in himself. But over the last 20 years, I've kind of been back on the basketball scene over the last like probably 10 with my youngest son and my older son being in high school and really admire the work you've done. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about this, a little bit into this podcast about school of choice versus public, but what you've been able to do in the NVL really over the last 5 years has been really impressive. I mean, you guys have had two late runs into the state tournament. You've been able to beat some of the Waterbury schools, which historically, for those that don't know, the Naugatuck Valley, has always been dominated, especially in basketball, right, by the Waterbury schools. And last, I think before they closed, Sacred Heart was dominant for like 5 years, right? 4 or 5 years. They didn't lose a game. And then we saw, Holy Cross back in the 90s had a couple runs where they were really dominant. And then you had all these Waterbury schools, right? So you've been really able to crack that top four. As I know for those that follow the NVL, there's usually like that top four. But what's that been like for you? First part of that, what's that been like for you as a coach as you've built this over 20 years? But then second part of that, you've had your two boys and some kids, even Shane White Jr. I know has been part of that like trio that you've coached since like Biddy ball up through like where they were this year as seniors and having success still in the NVL.
Yeah. So going back to the early part of that question and statement that you said. So yeah, I took over for Joe Cavallero, and it's funny that when I first took over there, I thought I was his son. Like, oh, Joe. I'm like, no, that's Cavallero Carfiello. So like we switched them, Joe Cavallero, Joe Carfiello, and Cav was my coach, great coach, just a great mind for the game. Like he was great to learn under, play under, all that. As far as taking over, when I took over, we were a bigger school. We were L. We had Seymour kids, we had Oxford kids, we had Beacon Falls kids. So that was a big transition. We started off, we had some good years in the start, and then there was a lot of lean years when we lost a lot of those kids, and the NVL was really at its peak. Um, I would say like the last 9 years, I think we made the tournament 7 of the last 9 years, and that's when it really started as far as making Seymour kind of a basketball school too. I mean, to talk to the point that you were saying, the last 3 years we've been number 4 in the NVL in wins. I think it's career, Holy Cross, Crosby, and then us. So I mean, and I think we're pretty close to the third spot. But we have been able to crack that and beat some Waterbury schools now 3 years ago in the NVL tournament. We beat Crosby. This year, we beat Wilby in the opening round of the NVL tournament. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's players. You go through spells where we've been the same program as far as what we've been trying to do and all, but I've had great kids, but we haven't always had, the talent that we've had the last, 9 years, I would say. So it's it's been a lot of fun. The last 3 years have been a heck of a ride. We got 50 wins over the last 3 years with this group. You know, starting with the kid in Drezik senior year, Daniel Villanueva, those guys, then to the Michael Rossetti, Indra Paraj senior year, and now to the Robbie Joey, Shane White senior years. Those guys. It's been a heck of a run, no doubt.
If you look back over, and you've had some players even before that. I know one of them in
Yeah,
particular, Deion Perkins, who was a real special player for you.
he's the best player ever to come through Seymour, in my opinion. Yeah,
So that was going to be one of my questions here is like, who's been, other than your kids, Joe,
yeah,
we
yeah,
take them
yeah,
out of
yeah.
the equation. That'll be unfair. But so Deion Perkins has been the best player ever to come through your 20 years, other than
In my
your
20 years, he's the best, by far the best scorer that's ever come through. But I know he's my. I'm telling you right now, Joey's right there. Joey. The year he had, and just the both sides of the ball, um, he's top of the list. And so is a kid by the name of Jalen Crawford, who was 1,000 point scorer for me. He had a brother that came for 1 year, Kevin Crawford, who was the most athletic. I don't even know if I could say kid I've coached, but maybe the most athletic kid I've seen play. But he averaged 4 steals per game is the 1 year he came, which is, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's incredible. 4 steals a game. Um, and he played for 1 year, but those are, there was a kid, Tim Dobson, who Central wanted him, all the big time schools wanted him. It just, things didn't work out for him one way or another. But he was, a 6'8" kid who was a double machine. He had triple doubles with blocks. That was a year I think we won about 12 games that year, and I think we lost to Stonington in the playoffs that year. But he was far back, earlier 2000s.
wow. So kind of question staying in line here, and maybe for some of those middle schoolers that are
Mhm.
going to be watching this, we hope,
Yeah.
whether they're here in Seymour, and this is good advice for anywhere, regardless of where they're going to school and going to that next level. What kind of do you look for, from kids coming up through the system? Like, are there certain things that like you're really keen and in on, like to build? I mean, you've built something there in Seymour. You've had great success. Yes, you've mentioned a bunch of players, but there's a lot of other things that come into success. When building a program. So, are there certain things that you would give like kids in middle school, like advice right now, if they're looking to make that jump next year and go to high school and make their teams, or maybe there's kids at Seymour Middle that'll be coming in for tryouts in the fall, and hopefully you'll be there. And what will you be looking for?
So, I mean, there's obviously you have to have skill, but we look for, tough kids, like and especially mentally tough kids that, are gonna, play through things. And, whether, I always preach that 32-minute games. There's going to be highs, there's going to be low. You can't get too high, you can't get too low. We've had teams in the past where we've kind of, gone through a bad spell and we've kind of wilted, you know what I mean? But we want kids that are going to be able to just like punch back, take that punch and keep punching back. Obviously skill, but we're not the college level. I can't go out and recruit the kids. I would love to have up and down, pressing and running kind of kids. That's my game. I like to do that. I like to press, run, get up and down the court. And we've been lucky enough to have that kind of speed the last few years. But that's not always going to happen. You have to coach who you have in high school. You're not going to go out and recruit. Well, I mean, most schools aren't going to go out and recruit. But so I would just say mentally tough, being able to roll with the punches, and just being coachable. We've had so many coachable kids over the last few years where, they buy into the system. It's easy. We've been lucky enough to have kids play for multiple years where they know the system, and it's like that. We have coaches on the court basically. So just, being coachable, and like I said, being able to just, fight through things and get through the tough times and just come out and still win. And you've seen our games. You've seen, we've gotten down. It was a game at Kennedy. I know you guys didn't get to do that one. The game where Joey scored 1,000 point, we were down like 18 in that game. And that's a good Kennedy team. And we came back and won that game, I think, by 3 or 4. That's what we've been looking for. That's what we've been having the last few years. There was a gap where we kind of would get down, and in years I'm saying, where we would get down and then kind of not fight back. But that's been the biggest difference, I think, in this last 8-9 year run, where we just have mentally tough kids that hate losing. So that's the key.
Do you think, and I know you mentioned something at the beginning, which I kind of like totally forgot about that, right? And I live in the next town over,
Yeah.
Beacon Falls, which you mentioned. So Do you think with that shift, and I know you've experienced this over the years, you mentioned a couple players that were multiple sport athletes, and the shift in the sense of where you went from, a three-town school to a one-town school, and now you went from, a high school of 1,200 kids down to 600, 700 kids. You got kids playing multiple sports. Do you think that's a like an advantage or disadvantage maybe for, a lot? And then this is not just a Seymour problem, but I think this is like there's a lot of schools in Connecticut where you have like multiple athletes playing multiple sports. But do you see that as an advantage from a basketball standpoint that you have kids playing football and soccer in the fall or baseball in the spring where, maybe towards the end of the basketball season, they're like, already thinking ahead and, those kids coming into basketball need kind of like we always talk about it early in the season, that rust to kind of get off before they actually get into basketball mode.
Yeah, no, I do think it's a plus. I think there's like numbers to back that up too. If you read articles and things about, you don't want to specialize in one sport all year long. I mean,
Yeah.
even look at some of the best kids that have gone on and played, like a Byron James from St. Paul years ago. He's, the kid's been on on the Cowboys for in the NFL, but he played basketball. I mean, there's things to be said by playing multiple sports, and I think part of why we weren't successful early on when we lost those towns was because I think kids were kind of pigeonholed into specializing in our school for a little bit. Not by the basketball program, but we would lose some kids, I'll say, and that hasn't happened recently where we've had a Caden Dresnick who's all state in basketball, all state in football, all state in track. We're too small of a school to specialize in one sport because then, there's only so many athletes in the school to go around. So, I mean, I do think it's a good thing. Forget about Seymour. I think it's a good thing for, any school. And there's times, there are times where a kid is, there's an exception where maybe he doesn't want to get hurt and he's that good of an athlete. Like maybe the kid from Notre Dame there. I don't think he's playing maybe he is playing other sports, but he's probably specializing in basketball. And I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. But you're only in high school. I always tell the kids, you're only in high school for 4 years. Enjoy it. Enjoy the 4 years that you have. Play anything you want to play. Because really, like I said, those are some of the most, fun times of your life.
Yeah, it's interesting, you say that. I remember 2 years ago, I think there was a kid from WCA who never did track. I forget I was maybe Williams or I think maybe super athletic, right?
I think it
And
might have been Williams.
yeah, he played a great basketball season. I think it was the year they won that state tournament, and then he ended up doing track. I happened to be at track meet, and he was like an all NVL,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, that's Caden. So Kate, we're sitting at our all-state banquet for Caden. Obviously I went with Caden, and so he's like, Coach, I had to do I think it was, I don't know if it was high jump or javelin or something. He's like, I had to do high jump today. I'm like, and how'd you do? He goes, I came in first. I'm like, of course you did. I'm like, because you're just an athlete. So like he's never done it before. His first day he's doing it, they're asking him to do it, and he comes in first.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. My next question here, and I know this has come up a lot, for those that don't live here in Connecticut, the way that the end of the season tournament works is now they've got 5 divisions, and it pretty much goes from your top programs, which are pretty much all the private schools, not all of them, but most of them, a couple schools of choice. So again, private schools in some aspects similar, where you have this choice where anyone can go to those schools. And then some of the really, really big public schools. And I know they've got this math where, depending on your wins and how you've done and where you have placed in the last couple years, if you've been in a lower division, then you get, I guess, asked to move up. I don't think they force anyone to move up because clearly we've seen teams stay in certain divisions. And it goes from 1 to 5, basically, right? And then your fifth division's typically the smaller schools, which it's kind of wild. I mean, I guess a lot. I don't have
Choice,
a
by the way. They don't ask, you don't have a choice. You have to, if they want you to move up, you're moving up.
But Joe, I think like Bunnell's a great example, right?
Yeah.
Like they won Class 3 last year.
Mhm.
I don't think they were required to move up to Class 2, which I felt this year.
They
And
weren't. That's what but if all the numbers came out and they had to go to 2, they wouldn't have had a choice. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? You can move, I think you can only move to 1. If somebody drops out, you're able to move to 1 if you want,
correct.
but you can't, there's no movement. Like you have to play where they put you, but you definitely can't move down. You know what I mean? Like they can't.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, and I know you and I have had a lot of these discussions
yeah,
off the record too, right? Like off the
yeah.
pod here. And my question here is, I just would love, you've been in this school, you've been coaching for over 20 years, you've been dealing with and the CIAC, and this is not a knock on them, and I don't think there is a perfect solution to this, first of all, but I also feel like I think it works some years, and then some years it just is like off, like whatever the formula is that they're working with. And I think over the past like 5 years, I think really coming out of COVID, what we've seen is these schools of choice, the private schools, the capital prep, not capital prep, but like the WCAs, which is like a school of choice in some aspects, right? They can pull from everybody in Waterbury. There's Platt and Meriden, right? That is a school of choice. They can pull kids from anywhere. There's SMSA, which you guys went up against SMSA last
School
year.
choices. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're pulling kids from all over Hartford, right? And
Yeah.
there's a school in New Britain too as well. So there are these schools that I think in the past, and I don't know if I think personally part of it's a little bit the travel programs, have kind of gotten themselves involved in some of these schools because the coaches, whether they run travel programs or whether their, friends are running these travel programs and how that works with kids. But I guess the bigger question here is, you know, where do you stand in the school of choice versus public? Because there is a disadvantage advantage. There clearly is. And we saw that. I mean, we've seen this here. This is we're taping the day after the state championships are over. Class Division One had, Notre Dame, West Haven versus St.
Right.
Bernard. And in the semis, it was four private schools, right?
Right.
You had East Catholic, St. Bernard's, Notre Dame Prep, and Notre Dame West Haven, which all recruit. And they all can bring kids in from all over the world, basically, if they wanted to, as long as they live here in Connecticut, at some point.
So I think, going by, I think they had good intentions, CAC, what they did, and I applaud them for it. And I still think it's, partially working. They wanted to get not just schools of choice, but other schools maybe out of the smaller divisions that they shouldn't be in. I just think now it needs to be a little bit looked at again and revisited. Like the NBL, for instance, we don't have Sacred Heart anymore, and we have, PowerPoints times 3 for our division. So that means, even though we're a small school and should probably be in Division 4, maybe borderline 5, but probably 4 is our normal class. We get everything times 3 for the PowerPoints. So if we beat, let's say we have 30 PowerPoints on the season for the teams that we beat, it goes to 90 times 3. So that puts us always into that's why we're Division 3 basically. And now I'm not sure that, that makes all that much sense, because then, like you said, we lost to SMSA, and the year before that in the semis, we lost to a team called Ellington. And their conference gets like 2 PowerPoints. So I don't think you're going to lose to whoever, you can lose to whoever in each conference. So I don't know. I think some things need to be revisited. One of which also, like you had mentioned, to Bunnell. And I'm not, they're a great team, but they did win it last year, stayed in Division 3. That's because they're a public school. There was, I think Cromwell won Division 4 maybe twice and stayed in Division 4.
Stayed in
I'm not
Division
sure
Four.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure they've moved yet. I think they're still
yeah,
in 4.
yeah. They're still in
And
four.
then you have a team. This one was the shocker to me, and I don't know if it was because maybe they were considered a school of choice and now they're not. But the team that just won 5 was the Chappaqua Valley,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They were in 3 last year, so they jumped down 2. They went down 3 to 5, if I remember correctly. So that one, I'm not really sure. I know what the formula is. I know it's the boys you have in your school. There's PowerPoints related. There's wins related for the last 3 years. If you're a school of choice and you make the quarters or down, you get points added to you. Like for instance, we were a public school when we made the semifinals. We didn't get penalized at all for that because we're a public school. So again, there's I think at heart what they were trying to do and on our doing is a good idea. I just think some things maybe need to be a little bit tweaked and looked at again.
Yeah,
Because and I'll say it again this year. We lost to St. Joe's. St. Joe's in Division 3. I know they, whatever, we're 8 and 12 and all, but our kids all come from Seymour. Everyone on our team is from Seymour, Connecticut. And
yeah,
the kids battled, but
yeah. I was kind of shocked to see some schools of choice in 3 and 4, I guess is where I'll leave it at, because I feel like there is an advantage in a lot of sports, right? Some sports it's somewhat levelized,
Mhm.
maybe. And I guess the challenging piece, and this is where I think the state
they're never going to satisfy everybody, and I get that.
Correct. That's exactly what I was gonna say, right? Like, and I feel sometimes like they're trying to do that, but you're not gonna. It's like
No, yeah.
impossible to do that, right? If I were part of the committee, I would just make three divisions, Joe. My other question to you, and there was a certain school in the NVL, not to be named, but did not have a quality win except for one out of, and in the NVL tournament, they were ranked higher than you. So this is my other argument with this whole formula too. I feel like 8 wins is not even 500. And so like I get it, like, they're doing it because they want 5 divisions, but maybe go to 3 divisions and just make the benchmark 500. Because what are you really rewarding for 8 and 12? Like, are we really like, I mean, you're getting, at 8 and 12, you're probably the bottom seed. And I don't think, have we ever seen, I don't think in the last 5 years, I've never seen a bottom seed beat a top seed in that first round. I don't think we've seen many of those.
One year the year when I said we had the Crawfords,
Yeah.
the 1 seed, and this was when they were filling the bracket. Ansonia was the 32 at 7-13 and beat the 1 seed and then played us in the second round. So that was,
Wow.
yeah, but I mean, yeah, they don't usually make it to the Mohegan Sun, you know what I mean? Or anything like
Yeah.
that. But,
Yeah.
it happens where they were, that was when the NBL was really a power. And I think the number one was a Berkshire team. And, no disrespect to, I forget even who the school was, but they went undefeated and Ansonia went in at 7-13 and beat them.
And beat
Yeah.
them. Yeah. So,
And I knew they were going to beat them. I just knew like how I knew Ansonia just played an impossible schedule. That was when we were playing like the Waterbury schools twice and everything.
yeah.
And they went in there. I knew they were going to like this team is going to give this other team fits, and we may get another home game because we may be playing Ansonia.
Yeah, I would love to see them go to like 500 is like the benchmark instead of that 8 and 12, which I get, like, 8 wins, whatever. It's
Yeah,
like
that makes sense too. I get it. Yeah, that's
like
been like
make
that even
make that
before this though.
yeah, make that
Yeah.
benchmark 50%. Like, you got to win 50% of your games, because then I think that at the end of the day, it's like you want to have competitive games, and this is the other thing that's going to come out of this conversation, I'm sure. Like, we've seen, I think, Division One this year, the average first round like margin of victory was like 45 points, right? And
I would
so
like to look back and see if that was just this year or if that was just an anomaly. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that hasn't been like that like the last couple of years. I feel like they were
yeah,
closer games.
I would love to see, though, like, it'd be interesting. Maybe we'll have to look at the statistical analysis of this. I don't think, and I know this year there weren't many 8 and 12 teams that won out of that. I mean, there were some upsets. I mean, like, Brian McMahon came, what, they were like a 26 or 22 seed. So
St. Joe's. St. Joe's
yeah, St.
was a
Joe's.
and they won 2 rounds after and then
Yeah.
they
So,
almost beat McMahon.
but to our what we said before, though, they probably should not have been
They're
in
a different, yeah,
D2.
they're a different animal. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. They should probably have been a D2 school, in my
But
opinion.
like you were saying about with the 8 and 12, it's not just basketball though, too. Like baseball does that, right? And then I mean football, it's like you said, it's all about they want more teams because I mean, look what they've done to football now. You got teams in football making it at 5-5,
I
six and
know.
four. That makes no sense to me. Like that
Well,
you have a 5-5 football team making the state tournament.
we've talked to many football coaches, Joe, and the other thing with football, as you know, as a basketball coach, now that is with the playoffs the way they are. Like, Ansonia, I think, didn't get their kids until the second week of the season because they played in that state championship,
It
right?
was even more rushed this year. So like
Yeah.
there was 10 practices before the first game because they had to make sure that we fit the season in to get to Mohegan Sun with that contract that's going on up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, some kids practice like 3 games, 3 days before playing a game.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
But I will say this, just to follow up one thing you said that the something that may make it better, and I've heard this from coaches and I've heard this from broadcasters and people in the know in high school basketball. What if all the teams that made the tournament at the end of the year, you rank them then? You know what I mean? You look at the season that they had, you see who they played. So then you don't have these 16 teams in Division One to start the season and these 30 teams in Division Two to start the season. And then you rank them at the end of the day and you say, all right, well, listen, I'm just going to say Bunnell, but like you look at Bunnell, you say, this is a really good team. You know what I mean? That they probably playing one, at least two, you know what I mean? So then you rank them there. And then, maybe there's a year where you look at us and say, all right, this team shouldn't be 4. They should be moving up to 3. They beat so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. Like,
Yeah.
I think that would make a little more sense if you had all the teams that make it and then you rank them at the end of the season.
Do you think though that in that calculation, then you have to tie in like what percentage of scoring is coming back? Because clearly, like some teams, like yourself, you had a
Maybe
senior.
this helps with that. So I think if you do it this way, because that's not that's not involved at all in what's happening now. You know what I mean? So you could have had a great 3 year run, and then now you're in Division 2, and you got nobody coming back. So maybe you just squeak in at 8 and 12. But if you do it the way I was just saying, it's based on that one year. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So you're looking at that year, and you say, Joey Carrafiello scored 24 points per game. Like this team might be pretty good. We got to move them up, or just I don't know. Wilby has 3 kids averaging 15 points per game. We had them in 2 or 3, but maybe now we should move them up. So you look at it at the end of the year. I think then you rank you rank teams that I've heard talk about that. I don't know if they're going to actually do that, but
Yeah, that'd be cool. I like that idea. I think anytime you can go, I think at the end of the year and look and then rank those teams as they go. And because I think in the beginning of the year, there's so much hype and there's so many unknowns. And then once you get through that season, you can kind of you know where teams fell through.
another perfect example. And Coach Box, a good friend of mine, has an amazing program at Danbury High School. They're good every year. Had a little bit of a down year this year, but they're Division 1. Now let's say they had to play because even if with 6 wins or whatever, you still have to play when you're Division 1.
Yeah.
Let's say they scratched in and got 8 and 12. They should have been like 2 or something. I mean, they weren't a Division 1 team this year.
Yeah.
So I mean that I think that would alleviate some problems if you rank the teams at the end of the year as opposed to the beginning of the year.
Yeah, true. I like that. I like that. Well, we'll see what the CIAC does because I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of chatter about it. Couple of questions left here, Joe. I know you talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but this one's for us. Like, I know we've been, we did half a season last year with Project Purple Sports streaming. I still go back to the shot of last year, which was Jaquan Ellis hitting, which Fitch, made a run this year, which is so crazy, right? Like,
Yeah,
think
yeah. Well, I
about,
knew they were going to make a run.
yeah.
They had everybody back. If they didn't lose the kid to New London, they probably would have won the state
I
championship.
know, which is wild, right? But
Yeah,
so, that game last year, that still goes down as probably one of my favorites. And then, all the games this year. But what has it been for you, coaching to been able to work with us, the last full year, with streaming the games and we gotten the team involved with the warm-ups. We've done a
yeah,
bunch of awareness games. I know your
yeah.
family's been impacted by it, with the disease. So just let's talk a little bit about that.
It's been amazing. Like that this has you guys have definitely added to the joy and the fun of the last couple of years, and I'm sure you guys had a lot of fun too. You guys know that you guys I usually go home and watch the broadcast afterwards, and then and hear you guys critiquing this and critiquing that, and then I'm texting you guys. And the other day, Zach was like, you guys are talking about how we had one of the bench players who wasn't on the bench. And it's like, oh, you guys are wondering. So I'm like, I got to tell them that everything's okay. So that's actually, I'm like, no, he's okay. He had to go away for a funeral and, everything. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great having you guys there and all the awareness that obviously you guys bring to the disease. And then just to be able to get out there and, broadcast games and even, it's twofold. You get to watch Seymour basketball and obviously like Notre Dame you're doing now and all the other games, but you also, then the people that tune in get to become a little bit more aware of Project Purple and what you're doing, all of that. So, I mean, it's been amazing. And, the kids love it. Kids love coming out at the end of the games if there's a player of the game and those kind of things. They're watching. And then they'll go back and they'll be critiquing their teammate on what that was said and everything afterwards too. So it's been a lot of fun. Absolutely.
Yeah, this year was a lot of fun. I mean, I think you fired your camera guy like midway through the season. I think you told us. Or no, I shouldn't
Yeah,
say
a
it. I
little
know, I
bit. A
know
little,
that's
well, we
official.
didn't fire him. He had a rough day and he never came back. But so
So
then,
we
yeah, that's how
became,
I was taking your games and putting
yeah,
them on the huddles. Thanks to Zach.
yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. We were the unofficial or official Seymour video partner.
Yeah.
Uh,
So your broadcasts are going to live on in infamy and huddle now, as long as those
yeah,
games
I
are on
love
there.
it. I love it. I love it. One of our competitors. My last question here, man, and I'll just say this before I get to that. It has been awesome. I know we've known each other for a long time
Mhm.
previous, outside of like the four walls here, and
Yeah.
it's been cool to see the success you've had, Joe, and it was really cool. I think for me the moment was like I walked in the Stop and Shop after one of the games, and one of the moms was talking about watching the game because she couldn't make it. Her son was a freshman last year and I was just standing behind and I was like, oh my God, they're talking about, watching and clearly I'm a big basketball guy and I love doing basketball, but the whole Seymour community has been great, because we have done other sports. This year we did soccer, we did volleyball. Last year we did softball and baseball. And it's just been really cool and it's been fun to just really see you guys compete. So I just want to thank you for allowing us because, you'd be surprised, not to name names, but, we have expanded and some coaches don't want their teams on live stream. I don't know, maybe it's a competitive thing or, maybe they don't want teams to scout. But now with all the cameras and all the
There
gyms,
anyways. Yeah, it's all out there anyways. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's all out there, and now it's wild. You guys experienced this year. You got all these influencers and social media people following all these teams, doing all these videos. So,
yeah.
like on any given night, on any high school basketball game, there's probably 2 to 3 people doing stuff on the side on Instagram, anyways. So you're gonna see highlight reels, right?
I
Like
don't even
it's
know the last time I had to go out and scout, like driving to go scout, to be honest with you, because you can find any game online that you want to find pretty much.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty wild. So thank you for the support and for allowing us to really work with you guys over the last year, and we hope to continue this as we go into next year.
Yeah.
My last question here, though, through all your years, and this is a loaded question, probably super hard. What's been the greatest coaching moment you've had?
I think you would think this is hard, but I think I have to go back to the Brookfield game. I mean, like you said, the Fitch game, I mean, I remember I just collapsed on the ground. I was just like, I cannot believe that he just hit that shot. We won this game. It was our first lead of the game. So that's
Yeah.
up there too. Like, but I really think that Brookfield game, because it shows what I was going back to earlier about the toughness of a team that we'd like to have and the mental toughness. You're in a hard environment in Brookfield. I mean, it was packed and they were loud and they were a difficult crowd, you know. We were down 23 points at the half. I think we were down 20. And we went in there, and I don't even know if I believe what I was saying to the kids, but I'm like, guys, listen, they made so many threes, and they did. They were just jacking threes, and they made everything, So I'm like, we just got to chip away. No team can shoot like that for two halves. Okay, next thing you know, we're chipping away, we're chipping away, we're chipping away. We put it in overtime. And then to add to that, on a personal level for the coaching moment, the kid who hits the game-winning free throw is Joey. So, I mean, that was all tied into a bow. That was probably my favorite coaching moment of my 22 years, without question. Like to put us into the quarterfinals where we hadn't been in a while, and then knowing that we were able to maybe, get a couple more wins going out of that too. And to come back in that environment, that was a really, really special game. Probably the most special of my career. Yeah.
It's awesome. Coach Carrafiello, thank you for joining us here on the Project Purple Sports podcast. Thank you for giving us the opportunity over the last year to stream Seymour boys basketball. And I'll just say, man, I hope you come back next year. We're gonna do
Around
games
either way, I'll be
regardless,
around. Either way, I'll be around.
but it's always great to get that text after the game to say either yes, I agree with what you're saying, or no, like you're crazy. You and
You
Zach gotta
definitely have some
stop.
favorites. You definitely have some favorites.
I love it. Coach
Uh,
Carf, thank you so
Thank
much.
you again. Thank you for everything you guys and Zach do. It's great.